Lieutenant. Good to see you. God bless you, sir. Thank you, too. Good ranger.
Good morning. Well, Mother Nature's maybe. But anyway, before I start, Falmouth is a community that's blessed in many ways. We've got 8 scout units in town serving our youth from the first grade through college years. We also have seen a resurgence of the Girl Scout with girls from Daisy and Brownies through seniors. Our last Veterans Day, we had 4 youth leaders from Falmouth, 3 Boy Scout troops, our Sea Scout ship lead, U.S. Pledge of Allegiance. As with any youth organization, it takes many dedicated adult volunteers to get involved and lead, train, and advise our youth. It is my honor to introduce a representative adult leader from each of the Falmouth Scout units to lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Frank Geishacker, Cub Pack 39. Frank is also the Cape Cod Islands president. Tom Swift, Cub Pack 41. Paul Donovan, Cub Pack 43. Ed Bruce, Troop 38, Scoutmaster. Adam Thomas, Troop 40, Committee Chairman. Bill LaRuffa, 42, Scoutmaster. Greg Remedies, Venture Crew 37, he's an advisor. Diane Newell, Ship 40, committee member. Corey Remedies, Girl Scouts, troop leader. All of these people have these young citizens of Falmouth in the area, and I think we should all give them a big hand right now. On another score, I'd like to make just a short speech about what this day is all about. Before we begin our ceremony, I'd like to say a few short words on the meaning of Memorial Day. Far too often, we as Americans take for granted the freedoms that we all enjoy, freedoms that was paid for with the lives of others that few of us actually knew, and some that we here in Falmouth should never forget. Judging from what Memorial Day has become, simply another day off or an excuse for a 3-day holiday, some tend to forget that this is a day in memory of those who gave their lives in the service of this country, so that we can all enjoy the freedoms of this day. Sacrifice is meaningless without remembrance, and this day is committed to that goal. America's collective consciousness demands that all of us recall and honor that the memory of those young Americans who gave their lives in a time of war in a foreign land. One's individual way of paying tribute, be it a silent prayer, a moment of want a silent reflection, a salute or recognition of our American flag, or any personal or public display of patriotism to the country for which they gave their all they had to give, their lives. This should be our civic obligation, a national debt to which we should all contribute. By preserving their memory and their service and the sacrifice, we pass on to the future generations this responsibility that we all share. As time goes on, there becomes fewer and fewer standard bearers as the 12 million graying American veterans begin to disappear. The tradition and purpose of Memorial Day must never change. Let us all never forget those who served and gave too much to this United States of America. Gave so much to this United States of America. Thank you for all being here today. As we begin our ceremony, let me see if I can find my way in here.
Let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So, opening remarks, you
Yeah.
bring on.
I'd like to introduce at this time the MC for today, Ahmed Mustafa.
Right behind.
Good morning, and what a pleasant surprise. Even with the rain, you turn out. That's great. It just goes to show the pride that Falmouth has. So I want to compliment you on that. Right now, the opening prayer, Chaplain Matthew Drayton, United States Coast Guard. You please, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let us pray. Author of all liberty, 116,708 souls in World War I, 405,399 in World War II, 33,516 in Korea, 58,209 in Vietnam, 4,497 in Iraq, and 2,356 to date in Afghanistan. And all our patriot saints in every other skirmish and conflict, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, friends, and fellow warriors, all selflessly pursued the cause of freedom with their lives. We cannot add to it, nor can we subtract from it. And so today, we ask your grace. It is their bravery we wish to commend, their courage we wish to give tribute, and their sacrifice to which we are indebted. And though the world may take little note nor long remember this memorial prayer, may we always remember what they did. Amen.
Before we begin the regular ceremony, we have a few distinguished guests in our audience. We have the former Chief of Staff, General Gordon Miller. Is he here?
Sullivan, Gordon Sullivan.
Gordon Sullivan.
Oh, Gordon R. Sullivan.
Just took his hat off.
I bet you thought you were going to go unnoticed. Huh? We have district representatives of Congressman Keating. Are they here? Dylan Fernandez, over here. We have our distinguished town manager, Julian Suso, with his bodyguard, assistant manager, Peter Johnson Staub. Over here to my right. We have the Board of Selectmen. We have a new chairman, Sue Moran. There you go. Vice Chairman, Megan English Braga. Doug Jones, Sam Patterson, and last but not least, Doug Brown, who just had a birthday. Over to my left, hiding in the corner over there, is Police Chief Edward Dunn and his bodyguard, Chief Michael Small from the fire department. And is Barnstable County Sheriff here? I don't see him. Okay. Director of Veteran Services, Don Lincoln, and his very lovely assistant, this nice lady, where is she?
He's hiding over there.
Over here, she's trying to hide. Julie Kramer, for which we can thank this entire ceremony has been planned by her, and she does it all in one day. I'd like to introduce the Veterans Council. Chairman Ahmed Mustafa behind me, Kevin Casey, Randy Collette, Robert Foose, he's a big tall guy, about 6 foot something. Yeah. Carol Kenny, Joe Quintiliani, Jim Sawyer, Robert Teixeira, and Ed Van Kuren. We have another great guy, Jay Hill, who was with us for years as the Director of Veteran Services. He attends our ceremonies all the time. We should never forget him. He did a great job in helping us get this promoted every year, and it gets bigger and bigger. And regardless of the weather, everybody shows up. Al Beal from the Coast Guard is here, and I just introduced all the Coast Guard troops. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn the ceremony back over to Ahmed Mustafa and get this thing rolling. Thank you very much.
Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What's that?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now the proclamation from the governor will be read to us by Siobhan Morris. I hope I pronounced that right.
Good morning, everyone. I am this year's Falmouth Project 351 ambassador. Project 351 is a youth service nonprofit organization that develops a rising generation of community-first citizen leaders. It strives to foster unity and strengthen the ethic of service through the engagement and enrichment of an 8th grade ambassador from every city and town in Massachusetts. Each January, ambassadors are selected by hometown educators for an exemplary ethic of service, the values of kindness, compassion, humility, and gratitude. For a year's term, Project 351 invests in these ambassadors' capabilities and inspires their sense of possibility through customized service experiences, results-driven leadership training, and exposure to issues, role models, and opportunities that challenge and enrich. United, ambassadors progress the opportunities that challenge and values of social justice. They drive transformative impact for a portfolio of nonprofit organizations and commit to a lifetime of civic responsibility and service. This year, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Charles D. Baker, has invited Project 351 ambassadors to read his official Memorial Day proclamation in their hometowns. So, standing here today, I am honored to present Governor Baker's proclamation to the town of Falmouth. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a proclamation. Whereas, while the nation was still recovering from the horrors of the Civil War, people in cities and towns across the country gathered to honor those Union and Confederate soldiers who had given their lives, celebrating the first Decoration Day. And, whereas, After World War I, the nation came together again to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country. Renamed Memorial Day, the last Monday in May is when people remember and honor the memory of all men and women who fought and died in all American wars and conflicts. And, whereas, throughout our country's history, thousands of Massachusetts citizens have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life. And, whereas, their legacy of patriotism and dedication to country is an inspiration to all Americans. And, whereas, it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who gave their lives, so that their sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim May 29th, 2017 to be Memorial Day, and urge all the citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Given at the Executive Chamber in Boston, this first day of May, in the year 2017, and of the independence of the United States, the 241st. By His Excellency, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth, Karen E. Polito, Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth, and William Francis Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now the Greater Falmouth Community Chorus will sing the Navy hymn.
It's in here somewhere.
These are the big names. Memorial. That's memory of them.
No, we're trying to follow the sequence.
Right. It's in order of sequence. You read all those names first of the people that in the past year.
Post that in the past year.
See,
No, we got it here.
These are the ones that the 23 more.
that's not the one he's reading. Next, he's reading next.
Which one is next? This one, right?
Right here.
Yeah, but that's not now.
Yes.
It's now.
Wait a minute. This is not the one you want.
No.
So they're saying that's the new names this year, which is all those names later on.
That's now?
Yes, later on after
Okay.
Jay plays.
Okay.
Then you'll hear the ones who are marked. So that's nice. Okay?
I got it. I got it now. This one here can come.
No, I just want to make sure that what's next after that. Okay, so we don't have the school band.
This one.
Yeah. So after this.
That's right after this.
One thing I gotta say.
And just as a passing note, in case anybody walking from that side came in and they thought they were in the wrong town, Mashpee Fire Department is assisting our fire department because the truck that we have is being serviced. So Mashpee is doing a great job out there.
As we proceed with that ceremony, we must remember those that have left us in this past year. So if you will bear with me, I'm going to read off a list of names of veterans, Falmouth veterans, your neighbors, your friends, your families that passed away this past year. So bear with me, because the list is quite long. Raymond P. Allen, Marines. Joseph P. Andrade, Army. Michael Ayers, Navy. Harrison Baker, Army. Manuel Barrows, Army. Howard Batty, Air Force. Paul Broder, Navy. Thomas Burgess, Army. William Burke, Army. Paul Burke, Army. Franklin Burnett, Air Force. John Burns Jr., Navy. P.O. Cardoza, Army. James Cardoza, Army and Navy. James Carroll, Air Force. Douglas Claiborne, Air Force. Thomas Collini, Air Force. Francis Coney Hershey III, Army. Donald B. Cook, Air Force. John Cowley, Marines. Kenneth Cronin, Army. John Cuddy Jr., Army. Joseph Day III, Army. Kerry Dean, Marines. Robert Dinko, Navy and Coast Guard. William Doyle, Army. Clifford Duckworth, Army. John Fakis, Navy. Stephen Fish, Army. David Folger, Navy. Joe Gagnon, Army and Air Force. William Gallagher, Coast Guard. Richard Gasparoni, Army. Richard Gilbert, Army. Stanley Goodliunas, Marines. Paul Golat, Army. John Gray, Army. C. Wesley Gregory Jr., Army. Thomas Greenham, Air Force. Edward Griffin, Army. Michael Guernsey, Navy. Billy Joe Guess, Air Force. Howard Edward Handy, Army. Gerard Hare, Air Force. Richard Harmon, Air Force. William Harrington, Army. Arthur Hassett, Marines. Robert Hayden, Air Force. Edward A. Herosian, Army. Cornelius Hickey, Air Force. Harvey Horowitz, Coast Guard. Morris Hurley, Navy. David Hutchins, Coast Guard. John Irving, Navy. Raymond Kenny Jr., Air Force. Robert Kingsbury, Army. William Kurgan Jr., Air Force. James Lancaster, Air Force. Howard Lane, Army. John Letty, Navy. George Leroy, Navy. William Lewis, Coast Guard. Robert Libertine, Marines. Daniel Lynch, Navy. John Lynch, Army. John Masita, Army. Walter Masajowski, Army. William Maney, Air Force. John Manning, Navy. Francis McCaffrey, National Guard. Hugh McCartney Jr., Coast Guard. W.F. McClure, Air Force. Please bear with me. Robert McDonald, Army. John McFarland, Army. Roger Medeiros, Army. Edward Melanson, Army. Antonio Mello, Navy. June Miller, Air Force. Francis Miranda, Army Air Force. Walter Manise, Army. Ralph Manise, Army. Daniel Morrison, Army. Paul Malloy, Navy. Teresa Murray, Navy. Louis Nasiska, Army. Richard Oliver, National Guard. Charles Oliver, Air Force. Donald Paccioni, Navy. Charles Parker, Army. Edward Pazek, Army. Peter Perry, Army Air Force. Robert Peterson, Navy. John Finney, Marines. Robert Pyers, Army. Samuel Powers II, Navy. James Quill, Army. Albert Raymond, Navy. John Richardson, Marines. Peter Sachs, Army. Richard Schultz, Army. Alfred Semensi, Army. Robert Silva, Air Force. Rebecca Silva, National Guard. Robert Singer, Army. John Smith, Air Force. Philip Stewart, Navy and Army. Walter Stone, Army. Paul Surratt, Army. David Sykes, Army. Eugene Tassinari, Army. Ronald Teixeira, Army with a Silver Star. Joseph Tenka, Navy. James Thatcher, Army. Clarence Thornton, Navy. Giles Threadgold, Army. George Trudeau, Air Force. William Van Rosenlauer Marcus, Navy. Samuel Vicioni, Navy. Frank Vieira, Army. Raymond Warren, Army. Kenneth Williams, Sr., Marines. Douglas Winters, Army. Ralph Warrist, Army. Redwood Wright, Army. That concludes the list of the Falmouth citizens who served in many different wars, and today we would like to memorialize them at this time. Thank you very much for listening.
In case you were counting, that was 129 people we've lost since last Memorial Day. At this time, before we get to the keynote speaker, I was in kind of a slump, so usually I write a speech, but this year, because of being in the slump and not being able to do it, my daughters put together my speech for me that I'm going to read to you shortly. Of course, it was edited and fixed by my wife, who does the editing around here. Memorial Day, May 29th, 2017. Today we gather here to remember the men and women in military service who sacrificed their all to protect our freedom. On this Memorial Day, May 29th, 2017, we also remember John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Massachusetts native and Navy veteran of World War II, in commemorating his 100th birthday. In January 1961, the 35th President of the United States made one of the most memorable statements. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But this being Memorial Day, I propose to all of you who have gathered on this lawn and those watching at home to consider what it means to memorialize. We can memorialize in many ways. We can build large granite monuments or hold grand parades. Yet, unlike JFK, I'm not proposing a gesture as great as going to the moon, but quite the contrary. I propose a small gesture, one that can be done by everyone. No one is too old, too young, too poor, or too infirm to memorialize in deeper, more soulful ways than through small deeds. Because a small act of kindness has an enormous effect, I am making this proposition after witnessing such an act while my family and I were planting flowers at family grave sites. One of my daughters noticed a brass placard just barely visible under the dirt and tufts of grass. As she cleared it, she noticed that it was a memorial placard of a United States Army private. She exclaimed, "He was nearly lost to the world because of the overgrowth." Like an archaeologist, she unearthed 2 more. And with that simple gesture, she made it possible for 3 veterans to be remembered by others who may walk through that area. A small act of kindness has brought in an estimate of $500 per year, sometimes more, to the Falmouth Veterans Council to augment its funds to help Falmouth families whose loved ones made the ultimate sacrifice. It began with Falmouth native and my neighbor, United States Army veteran Robert Teixeira. Bob's voluntary contribution to the Falmouth Veterans Council comes from his efforts in gathering, separating, and redeeming bottles and cans. He credits his son, Todd Texera, now deceased, who managed the Chappaquiddick Grill in West Falmouth, with their voluntary system of continuing their collection of bottles and cans that Bob picks up on a weekly basis. So what is the cost of blood, sweat, and treasure? When people have sacrificed their lives for our freedom, surely we can do something small. I'm not proposing that we match the greatness of their deed. I am asking that you do something small. And now what I would like to do is have Lieutenant Colonel Paula Smith, U.S. Army retired, come on.
Well, God bless you all for coming out today. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, Falmouth community, it is beyond an honor to speak here today. As Mr. Mustafa said, I am Lieutenant Colonel Paula Smith, and I stand here before you thankful 1,000,000 times over to have served in the United States Army from 1996 to this past October when I retired. But when I retired, I got to tell you, I had no doubts about where I wanted to move, where I wanted to continue serving in my community, and where I knew I would be received back with open arms. That's why I'm here, and thank you, Falmouth, for your support for my children, my sister, and my parents during my entire time in the service, throughout my travels, and beside me through all of my challenging and very rich experiences. Now, because I know Falmouth loves its veterans and its service members, this is not a surprise to me at all. The procession, this memorial, this time set aside to remember our fallen heroes, and a big chance to see so many people come together for it all. And yet today I challenge all of us to truly take stock in how we memorialize. Who do we remember? How do we perpetuate the memories? How do we share? And for those who may not know a fallen hero personally, but who respect and appreciate the sacrifices made, how do we learn of the stories and the experiences that we can then all cherish? I remain in total awe of those who served before me and those who served along with me every day. In fact, every time I hear the Star-Spangled Banner, I really get choked up. That song alone stirs so much pride and remembrance. I am humbled every day with all of the amazing things we accomplished as a team, how we, not I, made the difference. And I am thankful for the countless brave efforts, especially of those who died defending our way of life, many of which I know about, but probably many more I'm sorry to say I don't. How many stories don't we know? Well, perhaps you already know the answer to those questions. But in case you're willing to take this moment to ponder how and why, while you do, let me share with you a famous story of the untimely combat death of Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, 1st Brigade Canadian Field Artillery. See, Alexis was 22 years old and a popular young officer. On May 2nd, 1915, Alexis left his dugout and was killed instantly by a direct hit from a German shell. What body parts could be found were later gathered into sandbags and laid in an Army blanket for burial that evening. He was buried near the 1st Canadian Brigade's position on the canal bank, where there was a small burial ground later known as the Essex Farm British Military Cemetery. And in the absence of the chaplain, Major John McRae, his commander and friend, conducted a simple service at the gravesite. A wooden cross marked the burial place. Now, sadly, the grave has since been lost. Lieutenant Helmer is now commemorated on panel 10 of the Meningate Memorial to the Missing in Ypres. He is one of 54,896 soldiers who have no known grave in those battlefields. But do you know what? Like so many of our fellow servicemen and women, neither he nor his sacrifice was forgotten. Helmer's death was the inspiration instead for John McCrae's poem entitled In Flanders Field. Perhaps you've heard of it. That dares us to remember the fallen. And it reads like this: In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. Everyone, here's our test. Do we make it our business every day to remember? Do we make it our responsibility, our interest? Do those memories make us any more grateful for the sacrifices, the many sacrifices that have been made? When we see a veteran in town, do we take time to listen to their experiences, keep their memories as we do our own, and make sure the memories are perpetuated? I think it's fascinating in a world of such rapidly evolving technology that people don't come complete with a memory card. You know, a little computer chip that when one of us must leave this life, our hopes, our dreams, our inspirations, and our motivations, well, they're not just taken, lifted out of one person and put in some sort of repository to be accessed later. What we share, what we learn about each other, and in the case of Memorial Day, what we pass along about our views of what happened and why we remember our veterans who have died, is the only way of making sure our memories stay alive. As this year we're commemorating the 100th anniversary of the United States entry in World War I, we are again and again reminded of the true cost of war. You may have heard that the definition of a veteran is someone who at one point in their life wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount of up to and including my life. Well, I submit to you that the most sobering experience in combat is not the rush into battle at all. It's the loss when one of the band of brothers and sisters in arms doesn't return. Ever since 8 members of the Lexington Militia lost their lives in the first battle of the American Revolution, nearly 1.2 million service members, all that's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard, have made the ultimate sacrifice. Please keep in mind there are many more currently deployed to over 140 different countries, all as willing as those who preceded them to fight for and sacrifice for the freedoms of this United States. They all give us countless ways to be a thankful community and to be supportive even with thoughts and prayers. So now we've talked a little bit about sacrifice. We've asked ourselves, do we remember and how? And I hope we realize that we can all play an active role in remembering. With that, let me share with you something else. When I was asked to speak for today's ceremony, I immediately said yes. I mean, how could I say no? But as I did a little introspection, I thought, you know, I can pose questions and I can give some quips, but I really don't have all the answers as to what Memorial Day means and how do we truly remember. How could my experiences, I thought, you know, however many and diversified, even come close to representing those of all these veterans here today? It could. So I decided to conduct some interviews of fellow veterans, aiming to dialogue with those who served in various conflicts and in various services. I needed to hear those stories, see Memorial Day from their proverbial foxholes, and share those memories with you. I tell you this, it was a fascinating and emotionally rich way of remembering. So here's where I want to thank, publicly, Mr. Stanley Rabisa, Army veteran of the Vietnam War, First Team, Mr. Paul Andrews, Air Force veteran, Korean War, retired Technical Sergeant David Chapman, hails from the United States Navy, U.S. Navy Reserves, the Air National Guard service, and he is a Navy Vietnam veteran. And Mr. Gino McCarthy, a Navy veteran, Korean War. They helped me out a lot. Through interviews with these great Americans and Falmouth residents, I realized the heart of Falmouth is truly with veteran pride. I asked them about what Memorial Day means to each of them, what pearls of wisdom they would like to pass along to the town, should they be giving this speech here today, and a little insight into who they memorialize on Memorial Day and why. Well, here's a summary of the answers I received. Without blinking an eye, Paul Andrews will tell you that Memorial Day is a day to remember veterans who have passed away, our true heroes of the group, he said, and those who died so that we can do the amazing things we do in America. Remembering, honoring, even at a young age. It is what we say in the military, right looks like. After serving in 1953 in Korea as a fighter pilot, and on his last day in Korea as he waited his transportation out of theater, he watched on the tarmac as another pilot, attempting to land an aircraft, compensated incorrectly for over 1,200 pounds of fuel in his aircraft's tip tank. The aircraft was out of control and careened to the ground, killing the pilot immediately. He states, like the other veterans do, well, in war, sometimes there are expected losses. But he also adds, in Korea, 20% of the pilots died serving. Humbly, Paul keeps these memories alive. One other prominent theme throughout my interviews was, why me? One veteran said, the deaths that he saw were dangerous and messy and left him asking, why me? Why was I spared when others had so much going for them? But he lovingly proposed that he knows why him when he looks at his beautiful children. He posits a large part of the reason he got to come home was so he could be an integral part of their successful lives. Well, having served in combat as well, I know the response to loss in combat of why me, why was I not taken, remains a common thread with veterans. But it was particularly sobering to hear in the response that I received when I asked Gino McCarthy, what does Memorial Day mean to you, sir? Tears welled up in his eyes, and for a minute, he couldn't even answer my question. When finally he could, he offered barely audibly, why not me? There was a long pause, and then he thanked me for asking. But I had to thank him for sharing. Death and sacrifice is sobering. The moments ensuing a combat death are seared in the memories of those serving with and around the one that has fallen. There is nothing more poignant than realizing that a brother, sister, mother, father, aunt, uncle, friend, hero will not be sharing our physical space, validating our combat experiences and adding richness to our combat stories because he or she is gone. For many, the hour and the minute hands have stopped as a placeholder in time, a place where we can find ourselves going back to remember an untimely death, one that was honorable and courageous, one that was earmarked by service to our country during a conflict and kept sacred by a very special bonds that veterans, their families, and their communities have together. So why not us? I would propose that a big part of that answer is so we're able to share our stories and our talents. Something each one of these men that I've mentioned before have done and continue to do so graciously. I just saw David Eastman this morning, and he enjoys taking his talents and applying them to Cape Cod Cares for the Troops, under the Troops for the Spotlight effort. He is also a dedicated supporter of the Air National Guard and regularly assists in recruiting efforts by sharing his knowledge with those who are inquiring about the service. He remembers fondly the mighty 16 who joined the Navy together in 1965 from here, Falmouth. Perhaps for a job, maybe because it was patriotic, but definitely had a chance to be a hero. David gave me a superb picture of 11 of the following men after they enlisted in the Navy, the picture taken right here on the library grounds. David remembers the pride and the excitement of Dana McLean, Marty Martz, Joe Pyers, John Murphy, Phil Eastman, Art Medeiros, John Cotto, Glenn Steiding, Gordon Parker, Ken Freeman, Ron Stone, Richard Gagner, Charlie Joseph, Mike Ayers, Wayne Lewis, and of course, himself. Military service, Davis states, is not for everyone, but he knows that we all must appreciate the service and for sure, the ultimate sacrifices. He also points out that we are only one generation away from not being able to pass along the stories from our older conflicts. Something to think about. And that is why this day is so important to all of us. To pay a well-deserved tribute to those brave Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our great nation, who ensured for us the freedoms that we have enjoyed and we continue to enjoy every day. Now, as a community, I ask that we remain vigilant of opportunities to hear the veterans' stories, to compassionately listen to the memories, feel the pain of loss, and pridefully weave these memories into the tapestry of our blessed town. The Falmouth community is a hammock in which all of these memories can land safely and meaningfully, where I know they can be cherished. All of us here today are vehicles through which those memories travel. We are their voice, without which the memories are alive but not shared, and not made a part of this remarkable community's thread. Let's promise to continue to keep these memories alive every day and our heroes dutifully memorialized. To everyone here today and the whole town of Falmouth, thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you for this observance. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your remembering, and thank you for your support of veterans and service members every day. May God bless Falmouth and the community that makes it so great on this awesome Memorial Day. First team, out.
You know, it's funny, I was at my granddaughter's school for a veterans service over there, and that's when I first met Lieutenant Colonel Smith. And right from that moment, after listening to her speech, my wife was there too. We both agreed we had to have her here. So, glad you came. The next thing is we don't have the combined school band, so Jay Swain, by the way, those of you that have been our constant group that come here all the time, remember this gentleman here, Jay Swain. He started out here, I think he was 14 or 15, 11 years old, and he was playing the trumpet for us at that time. I just want to say that he's still with us, and also I compliment him. He just received his master's degree in music. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jay to do the tunes. And now for a reading of the names on Memorial Lane.
Before I read the names of those Falmouth citizens that are honored here on Memorial Lane, I'd like to thank the Department of Public Works for the excellent job that they have done in preparing Memorial Lane, the lawn, the markers. The Department of Public Works does a fantastic job for the Veteran Services. And I just couldn't let any more speeches being made without at least thanking everybody for the beautiful atmosphere that we have here this morning. I will now read the names of those that are memorialized on Memorial Lane. From the Persian Gulf, Sergeant Matthew Gallagher, Army. From Vietnam, Corporal Langdon G. Burwell, U.S. Marine Corps, Vietnam. Specialist Arthur F. Hennessy, USA, Vietnam. John Burgess, USA, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Bernard St. Jean, U.S. Marine Corps, Vietnam. Lieutenant Edward T. Mello, Jr., U.S. Army, Vietnam. Lieutenant Anthony Kupka, U.S. Marine Corps, Vietnam. From World War II, William McComsky, U.S. Navy, World War II. Staff Sergeant Charles Norris, U.S. Air Force, World War II. PFC Clarence Milanese, U.S. Army, World War II. PFC Ernest G. Barrows, U.S. Army, World War II. Corporal Leonard Fonseca, U.S. Army Air Force, World War II. Private Joseph Yasubio Jr., U.S. Army, World War II. Lieutenant Alfred James, U.S. Air Force, World War II. Chester Weeks, U.S. Navy, World War II. Staff Sergeant Joseph W. Spooner, U.S. Army, World War II. Lieutenant Stephen R. Papp, U.S. Army, World War II. Private Leonard L. Meter, U.S. Marine Corps, World War II. Lieutenant Robert Larkin, U.S. Air Force, World War II. Frank M. Cardoza, U.S. Navy Air Corps, World War II. From Korea, Lieutenant George W. Toh, U.S. Army, Korea. PFC James Nickerson, Marine Corps, Korea. PFC Alexander Booker, U.S. Army, Korea. And the World War I veterans, we have William Martin, I don't have their ranks, William P. Wood, Charles DeWillis, William Savage, and Paul Sherman Jr. These people are former Falmouth residents who are memorialized here on Memorial Lane. Thank you.
And now, closing prayer. Chaplain Matthew Drake, U.S. Coast Guard.
Before I close in prayer, I just want to thank you on behalf of myself. I'm an active duty member. Chaplains have the unique opportunity to serve with all the sea services. I've served with the Navy out in Guam, in California with the Marines, and now right down the street down at Woods Hole with our Coast Guard sector, southeastern New England, and now wonderfully over on base as well, alongside our Army and Air Force friends. So this flag right here that's at half-mast will be raised at noon today. And it is for that all veterans past, have served, honored, and died. Let us pray. Father, we thank you. We thank you first, perhaps, for the heart of people who would stand in the rain to memorialize those we look up to and honor. But even more importantly, you remind us that he who is willing to give his life will save it. Saved then are the many who gave their lives for us. They were humanity's best in the midst of humanity's worst. They had every guarantee to go and none to return. They were emboldened for freedom and followed the orders of men, but they were sustained and preserved by you and their faith then and now. To hear that order, stand up, hook up, and jump, fix bayonets, load your weapons, were words unimaginable in simpler, more youthful times. They lived through moments where souls stood still, and today their hearts move ours. We thank you for today's event. We thank you for all veterans, for they are the backbone of our country. And I pray that we would never be a country committed to war, but that we would forever remain a country faithful and willing to pay the cost of peace. We give you thanks. Amen.
And now, the Falmouth Garden Club, Robin Ketchum and Carol Amaral. And now the Brian Boru Band will play Amazing Grace.
In this whole thing, retire the color guard, mention it. Yeah. Jay's gonna play captain? Huh? Jay's gonna play captain?
And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tom Coeg from the Fellowship Health Resources, who's sponsoring a new veterans transportation program to take our veterans from here to the VA hospital in Providence. We've worked out a very good deal, and I think it's working out great. Next, Falmouth Military Support Group, I believe will be set up there. They're back by the World War I Memorial. If anybody wants to stop by and say hello to them, I think it'd be a great honor for them. There will be a light lunch at the Elks Lodge, 2380 on Palmer Avenue, sponsored by the Falmouth Military Support Group. Laying of the wreath ceremony at the Sailors Memorial with the U.S. Coast Guard and Sea Scouts located on Deacons Ave by the harbor. That'll be right after this. A reminder, look up and thank the Falmouth and Mashpee Fire Departments for doing a grand job of flying the flag on the west side. A thank you to Vow's Floral Design Studio for donating the flowers on Memorial Lane at the Deacons Ave ceremony. Thank you tremendously to the DPW, Rocky Gomes Parks Department for the beautiful job they did on the grounds here at the memorial, and they had to do the walkover because it was starting to cave way. A thank you to the DAV for supplying the small American flags for our ceremonies today. A thank you to the Elks for hosting the light lunch, and to the Falmouth Military Support Group. At this time, I would like to, before I retire the colors, thank the Falmouth Fire Department, the Falmouth Police Department, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the Scouts for their service. Retire the colors.
Face. United States Coast Guard. Forward. March.
Back in '98.
Thank you.
must compliment you. You are a stout, stout group. To hang in there with us like this, God bless you.
That concludes today's ceremony.
That concludes today's ceremony. We'll be heading down to Deacon Pond.
for ringing the bell. Next year,
He's in. Watch out, Andy. Please make some room in the walkway, please. Make some room, please.